Hello and welcome to another episode of Pilots React. I'm Ben. This is my friend Todd. Today we're going to be talking about a Beachcraft Baron that unfortunately a tragic accident over the weekend on Sunday, October 5th, 2025. A Beechcraft 58 Papa, that's the pressurized Beachcraft Baron. It's a twin engine, light twin, crashed, killing all three on board, including an 8-year-old boy. So this is an accident that has just occurred. We have very minimal information on this. So we're going to discuss the potential scenarios that could have led to this tragedy. And considering that three people lost their lives, we're gonna assume that there was no real pilot error, and we're going to talk about the possibilities that could have precipitated an accident of this magnitude. We could discuss pilot error as a potential, but at this point, with no information, we don't want to speculate in any way that the pilot was in any way the cause of this. And from what we're looking at, well, Todd, what are you seeing? Let's go through it.
First of all, I feel very sad for the family and the friends because from the information I gathered, it is limited information. It's not a lot out there in the news media. However, social media had a few connections to these individuals personally, and it hits my heart a bit to see something like this happen. What I see is I don't see pilot error. I see some sort of catastrophic malfunction or something along those lines, or some sort of medical condition, because to me it just doesn't seem like a normal stall spin accident or something like that. It seems a little bit catastrophic. So here is the airplane initially that they were flying. If you look into Bonanza, their airplane. Let me remove this for a second. There's always seems to be a delay with this for some reason. Their airplane, it looked like a well-maintained aircraft, and it ended up, unfortunately, looking a lot different like that. And that's one of the scenes from the accident. I landed in a field, in a peanut field in Florida. And so from what I'm hearing is they took the gentleman who was flying was an instructor, a very well-trained pilot. Very good pilot as well. And he took a father and a son, an 8-year-old boy, up on a hunting expedition. And when they were coming back, I think to get fuel in Florida, if you look, the airport is right about here. They wound up making a right turn, and it looks like it's a right downwind for a landing. And the data suggests, and I'll bring up one more piece of information here, that's their airspeed, the very last one, 166 knots at 1,300 feet. And if you look at the ADSB data, on the bottom right-hand side, you'll see the altitude. So they were leveled off at, 1,400 feet, 1,300 feet. And the last 30 seconds, they exceeded their vertical speed rate of 3,176 feet into the ground. And if you look at the headings, they made a turn roughly, from 160. Roughly 170 to 160, and then kept that path. So to me, Ben, that tells me a few things. It tells me that they were stabilized coming into an approach until the very end, and then the last 30 seconds they were no longer stabilized. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm looking at those speeds primarily because with the twin, the speculation is often that it was a single engine failure that wasn't managed properly. So like a VMC, minimum controllable airspeed rollover, where you lose an engine and the airplane decelerates and yaws into the dead engine. And if you don't get the nose down and get the speed up, you actually don't have the control authority to counteract the drag of the failed engine. You need to feather the prop, so make the prop aerodynamic, so it's not windmilling as an air brake out there. So what'll happen is, say an engine fails and the plane starts turning into the failed engine, and then it rolls over and it's catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic if you're at a low altitude. That is a classic called the VMC roll. Now, in this incident, there's no indication of that. While they do yaw a bit, that yawing or the turn could be, it looks like lining up with downwind. They don't drop below 160 knots or 159 knots and then 100. So it looks like they were stabilizing at about 160 knots and 1,300 feet, which I'm not exactly sure the airport altitude, but a 300-foot airport altitude, 1,300-foot pattern altitude makes perfect sense for Florida. Florida's low. So it looked like they were slowing down and getting low to land. They were entering downwind. They were going to make a standard left-hand pattern. But then once they got down to that 1,400 feet, then something happened. And the airplane basically just went straight at an extreme angle, because for you to gain that kind of vertical speed going from a couple hundred feet down to over 3,000 vertical speed, that's you've got your nose really far down for that kind of a descent rate. And then you've got this impact profile that does show the airplane was going generally had horizontal velocity when it hit. If this was a VMC roll or a stall spin, you'd have a simple crater, and you wouldn't have that length of sliding that the wreckage carved into that peanut field. So mechanical failure. What mechanical failure could happen at that point in flight? I don't think it was an engine. I think in an engine, you're going to see different situations, and most likely you lose an engine. You're over peanut fields. I mean, you're going to be able to put it down and not look like that in the end. So I don't think it was a problem with the engine. It could have been trim. Trim. If you have you have forward trim to counteract cruise speeds, and then you slow way down, then you're going to have a really strong pitching down. If you don't counteract that trim, readjust the trim for the slower speed. But that's just standard. So, I mean, what possibly the trim system failed, and by the time they got slow enough that it was the control forces were pulling the nose down, they couldn't get the power back in quick enough. They couldn't counteract it with strength. I'm not sure what the control forces are on the Beechcraft Baron. I am not a twin engine pilot.
I have obviously I used to teach multi-engine instrument instructing a long time ago. I don't have a lot of time, and I don't have a lot of experience in that arena. I only taught for 200 some odd hours. So this is going back a long time, but I do recall practicing the VMC, single engine outs where, you lose an engine. And if you don't feather that prop really quickly and maintain VMC, which is blue line, and in this airplane, I looked it up, it was 101. So blue line in this airplane is 101. So they're doing 160 to 190. They're nowhere near being uncontrollable at all. For me, when I was flying the multis, I found it to be hard. Actually, the second if you didn't get on that prop really quickly, you'd be in an uncontrollable situation. I remember being light and barely in Senecas, making a 150-foot climb with a 3 to 5 degree bank, feathered prop, and it still was not very easy. It was hard. Baron has a little bit more power, a little bit better of a performance airplane. However, I don't think any signs here point to that, because even if, let's say the worst case scenario, they lose an engine and they don't feather the prop, there would have been a massive yaw, as you said. They would have rolled most likely. It would have been a really terrible incident. Not like this isn't. So I see a medical issue. I see a trim issue, an elevator issue, a flight control problem, because this pilot, from what I read, is pretty, well-rounded, and he knew this airplane quite well. So I honestly, I don't know. It didn't go vertical. It didn't flip over. It wasn't a stall spin accident like most are. So I'm not equating this to pilot error. I'm equating this to some sort of malfunction, either medically and where, like, let's say he passes out, you have the father probably sitting right seat. He doesn't know what to do. It can easily have a lot of forward control force if autopilot's disconnected, and he'd have a hard time pulling that back, which would be the instinct most likely. But with the, props and the throttles up, it's going to be hard to recover if you're not a pilot. I see that being a potential. I see a trim runaway, as you said, full nose down possibly, and then him pulling and fighting it to the ground as a possibility. But this is all pure speculation. I honestly have no clue. I just feel really bad because in the career and the flying life of pilots, having something that you can't control to save your life is one of the biggest fears I think out there. Because generally we get trained, we feel comfortable in our airplanes. We know that in most situations, 98% of them, we can have some sort of effect on the outcome. In this scenario, I don't think they had the ability to have an effect on the outcome. That's just me once again speculating, but it looks like it was a controlled. Right here, it looks like it was a controlled flight until they got to the very end. Right here. So right there, that's a controlled path until that little crash bar, that little, last 1,000 foot where they're exceeding 3,000 feet a minute right to the ground. And the vertical and the longitudinal or horizontal path here tells me that they were still fighting. That they're still fighting there at some point. So be it the father at the controls, be it the pilot at the controls, someone's still fighting, and the wings are still horizontal, otherwise the path would have changed.
Yeah. That horizontal path says a lot, as does the flight track. The plane wasn't in a turn in its descent, as you would expect if there was if it was out of control. A wing is going to drop, and it's going to just kind of roll. That's what happens when you stop controlling an airplane. They don't fall out of the sky. They do whatever they're trimmed to do. And I think trim is a possibility. Runaway trim, medical. That's always a possibility. If he had some sort of an episode and slumped over the controls, then you've got the weight of a man on the controls who's ever in the right seat. I mean, honestly, when I fly with kids, I usually put them in the front seat as long as the trim and as long as the weight and balance is in. It's great to give kids an opportunity to be on the controls, show them that they can fly a plane. So that's like it. Maybe it was the kid at the controls, and or the father. Either one would have had a lot of trouble trying to, especially no flight experience or limited flight experience. I don't know if they had any, trying to pull the yoke back. And when you're forcing against even just trim, that can be extremely heavy. Now, if you've also got someone who's either passed out and interfering with the controls, trying to get that back, there's nothing really you can do. You're going to be using both your arms to pull as hard as you can. You're not going to want to let go in order to change your power settings or throw out your flaps or do anything. Like it's one of those situations where your strength just might not be enough. Or if there was a mechanical failure that I don't think the mechanical failure resulted in a completely uncontrollable airplane, because we do see that what looks like a wings level impact, or I don't know about wings level, but it's kind of going in a pretty straight line. Not that you'd get a curved line after impact, you would get a straight line, but that doesn't look, the impact crater doesn't look, it doesn't look like it was a very nose down impact. It was obviously very much, but I mean, I'd be surprised if it was more than about 35 degrees, 40 degrees of an impact for that, which
but
is
at 200 knots, that 30 degrees is fatal.
Oh,
you know.
Completely. I mean, the vertical speed, that vertical speed, no landing gear, no aircraft can withstand 3,000 feet vertical when it hits the ground.
Okay, so so I guess we just wanted to bring this up because it just happened recently. There's not a lot of news reporting on it currently, and our hearts go out to the families and the friends. It's going to be a hard path, for recovery, but as part of being, in the aviation industry, this does happen, and it's sad to even report about it. So I hope that we did the best we could to figure out what it might be going on, but also I don't want to speculate too much. I just think that I think the NTSB report here is going to be difficult as well because there's no black box, there's no CVR. The only thing
we don't know that. There's so many digital systems now that do have some memory.
Okay.
Like even my audio panel has the recording of the last like 10 radio calls. Now that's radio calls. So, but then also some like the engine monitors, those have memory. The GPSs, those often have some memory. So I'm hoping we'll learn. And the NTSB, they do a very thorough job. So we can hope, but the outcome is what it is. So prayers to all involved, the families, the first responders. And just hopefully we can learn and improve the safety coming out of any of these incidents.
Yep. Well said, Ben. I didn't know that about any of that, about the GA stuff. So thank you. And our condolences to everybody involved. Sorry about that. And happy tailwinds.